Hi guys, welcome back to a new video. So on today's video we will be doing a quick unboxing and overview on a liquid nitrogen pot which I would consider to be the most legendary LN2 pot ever made. So here inside this Kingpin Cooling packaging we have the legendary Kingpin Cooling Dragon F1 Dark liquid nitrogen pot. So the reason why I wanted to get this LN2 pot is mainly about compatibility wise with old CPUs and platforms. Mainly like some very old stuff like 775 and so on. So mostly I've been using the T-REX container which you have seen on many of my like newest videos and so on. I got the T-REX originally back in like 2018, around 2 years ago or a bit over 2 years ago. So the original T-REX which I got was this beta version of the T-REX container, which you can see over here. Actually we can put it that way around. So this is the beta version of the T-REX container. So you can see that it's clearly different from the retail design, like internal structure wise. So you can see it has 8 individual holes at the edges of the container. They are not connected with each other, nor they are connected with this huge big hole at the center of the container. So I didn't really like this overall design, so it's quite slow and fast at the same time. On initial pour it's very slow compared to the retail design and compared to many other containers, but at full pot it's actually quite fast, and also after proper glazing it's quite fast to some degree. So personally I didn't really like this container with very hard cold packing CPUs like X299 and similar. So the temperature is measured with, at quite near the center of the container on the underside or on the bottom side of the container over here. The hole is quite deep, so it actually goes quite close to the center of the container. But the way this container works is that it has most of its mass on the top and bottom edges of the container. So well, the way you see it on the picture right now is that it has most of its mass over here, on these edges over here. So it warms up very fast, the container, when you use a propane torch at the big center hole over here. And once you stop torching, it will immediately bounce back colder. And that's the same effect also when you pour some LN2 into the container when it has been glazed. It makes like very quick cool down, like it goes like a few degrees down immediately, and then it bounces back up like warmer a few degrees. So it had that weird bouncy effect due to this design. So that was the main reason why I did not like it. I was one of the few users who had the access to this beta version of the T-REX container. It's quite alright, or it's very good. This design with full pot CPUs like mainstream Intel, AMD CPUs and so on. At full pot it's very good overall. But the bouncy effect made it quite bad, or it made it so that I did not really like it as an overall pot. So I wanted to get it changed, and that's how the retail version evolved. And also I never really finalized the lapping of this container, so this is a beta version with some kind of like nickel plating, but it kind of failed. The nickel plating, the nickel plating kind of built up on the edges of the container, and it made the bottom of this container very uneven. So in order to get it better, I was going to lap it like I was told to, but I never really finalized the lapping process overall. So I might do it later on. There is some there's still some use for this container, although it doesn't really differ from the retail one even at full pot temperatures. So that's how the retail version evolved, which is the one you see over here, although this one, which I got from Vince, does not have nickel plating, but it doesn't really matter. The performance is still the same, if not better, because when you add nickel plating on the bottom of the container, it adds one extra layer on top, and nickel plating, or just nickel overall, has worse thermal conductivity rating than pure copper. So technically pure copper is better at the bottom of the container until it oxidizes very, very badly, because pure copper that doesn't have nickel plating tends to oxidize over time. So I think we can turn this around anyway, so it shouldn't go bad. So this is the overall retail internal design. So the huge like hole at the center was swapped with this like one big all-around hole on the whole container. Some more extra holes on the sides were added, and they are partly all connected with each other. Control-wise, this is a lot more better. This doesn't bounce like the engineering sample or the beta version, and this is still amazing pot at full pot temperatures, and this has enough like contact area at the bottom side of the container to to fit any of these like new CPUs that have huge IHS, like the new AMD Threadripper CPUs, like even the 64-core CPU, the 28-core Xeon from Intel, the X299 CPUs. That was one of the main reasons also why these larger pots were developed, because many of the old like universal pots have very small IHS, or bottom side contact area, so they can't fit or they can't cover the whole IHS of these new CPUs. So larger pots were needed for these newer CPUs. But that's how the beta version of the T-REX container differs to the retail one. I really like this final version of the T-REX container, the retail one. This is the container I would get right now for overall use. The only minus part is that this doesn't fit many old platforms, like for example 775 platform like the Rampage Extreme. The issue with Rampage Extreme is that I actually have the board over here, although it's quite dusty. This is another board that I'm using, not the Team Finland edition, but with the Rampage Extreme, the V-core caps over here next to the CPU, they actually stand a bit higher than the CPU itself, so you cannot mount the T-REX container sufficiently onto the Rampage Extreme. So the T-REX container will just hit these caps and it will not make proper contact with the CPU itself. So you cannot use the T-REX container well with many old platforms like the 775. Some boards you can fit the pot quite well, that don't have so tall caps next to the CPU, but at least Rampage Extreme you cannot mount it properly. So so there's some thermal paste left, but it should be alright. So that means I have been using the Devourer Beast container with old platforms still. So here's the Devourer Beast, the original one, with the one large deep hole at the center, then these multiple smaller holes on the edges, and they are actually connected with each other, and there's one there's some cooling surface area even lower than this space you see over here. So the thing about Devourer containers, if you ask me, is the Devourer pots are the best cooling containers only at normal room ambient temperature. So when you make the initial pour with LN2, that's where Devourer pots are the fastest containers overall. But when it comes to like full pot performance, I have slightly better result with the T-REX compared to Devourer Beast. So that in that way I like the T-REX more. Plus, when it comes to the most pure temperature control, the Beast isn't my favorite container. It's definitely alright, but it's a bit harder pot to control than many of the old, like more standard design containers, like for example the T-REX or the original SF3D inflection point, and most likely the F1 Dark, which I have inside the box right now. I actually have the original SF3D inflection point over here, but it has been modded for direct die cooling. So it's still the same as the original inflection point by Reba and SF3D from like 2010, but the bottom side of the pot has been milled so that it can accommodate direct die solution with modified IHS. So the modified IHS just sits on top over here, and this small square can reach the die itself. So you can see it has been used recently with i3 7350K, small area over there which is not covered by thermal paste. That is the size of a 7350K die. So just like that. So I wanted to get rid of the Devourer Beast, but it's not the only reason, the temp controller, why I wanted to try something more standard. So the thing about 775, mainly Rampage Extreme, is that, for example, if you have the world's best E8600 and you are really going for the highest possible scores, not just E8600, but for example E8400 and E8500, you will hit the Northbridge limit at some point anyways. It can be something about the MCH or the memory controller hub itself, or just max FSB. So if we want to get the absolute best out from our Wolfdale CPUs, it's possible we also have to put the Northbridge on LN2 as well. So if we take a look at over here, so my plan has been so that I want to run the Northbridge on LN2 without destroying the original heatsink assembly. So I have the small Northbridge spot for the Northbridge spot over here. So I would just remove this air cooling piece over here and put the Northbridge spot over here. The thing about the Devourer Beast is when it's fully mounted on a 775 CPU over here, the hold down bracket prevents the use of the Northbridge spot, because the Devourer Beast is relatively like, it's not very tall, it's quite short, and the hold down plate isn't like used at the very top. The hold down plate is used after the copper part itself, and then aluminium extension comes on top. So there's no room for the Northbridge spot. So I wanted to get something more taller and more standard so that I could use the Northbridge spot as well. So that's why I wanted to get the F1 Dark. So I don't really have that much use for the Beast anymore. I might just find a new owner for it. But that's the background story why I wanted to get the F1 Dark. So that I can use the Northbridge spot with old platforms, and the F1 Dark was always considered the best liquid nitrogen pot for the most strict temperature control, because it's a huge block of copper, because it's made out of a single piece of copper. So it's not like mix of copper and aluminium, like for example the SF3D container over here. It has 1.8 kilogram copper base over here, and then just screwed aluminium extension on top. The T-REX and the Beast are pretty much the same, so it's one single piece, one single piece of copper with aluminium extension. The only difference between the T-REX and the Beast is that the hold down of the T-REX is from the very top. So the T-REX is pushed against the CPU from the very top of the aluminium extension. The Beast is pushed against the CPU from the top of the copper part of itself. So the hold down plate comes over here. It's pushed in that way, and then aluminium extension on top, because some people liked to use the Beast without the aluminium extension, and many people like to use, or most people like to use, the aluminium extension anyways. The weight of the original Devourer Beast is around 2.4 kilograms. So it's a little bit heavier than the SR3D inflection point, for example. The weight of the retail T-REX and the beta version of the T-REX is around 2.9. They are quite the same, although the internal structure is different. Around 2.9. The F1 Dark, the internal design of the F1 Dark isn't anything like too radical. It's very standard, but it works. But the weight of the F1 Dark is 3.1 kilograms. So it has significantly more mass than any other widely used liquid nitrogen pot. It has more mass than even the T-REX, and it has significantly more mass than the Devourer Beast or the SR3D inflection point, as well as the EK version of the SR3D inflection point. Probably the only pot that it's even larger than the F1 Dark or the T-REX is the Devourer Beast TR edition, so the Threadripper Beast pot. That's definitely huge, so it's probably at least like 3.5 kilograms. But I haven't used that pot, and I don't see much need in getting it. But that's the background of my pots. So I want to use the T-REX container wherever it's possible, because it's better pot overall than even the F1 Dark. The F1 Dark is a bit clumsy with the very large CPUs, and it doesn't cover the whole IHS of these newer CPUs. So in that way it's very, very bad with the new CPUs. But it's very good for old stuff compatibility wise. So I wanted to get it that way. The SR3D inflection point just for direct die, although direct die doesn't really oppose that much like advantage in most of the cases. So I just want to use T-REX wherever possible, and then F1 Dark with the old stuff. The Beast can pretty much go after this, because it doesn't really have much need anymore. Okay, so after removing the other liquid nitrogen pots from the way, we can actually take a look at the F1 Dark itself. So this is how all of Kingpin's liquid nitrogen pots originally came. So this is the full retail packaging of the F1 Dark. So you can see Kingpin Cooling, Advanced Extreme PC Cooling, and all of the other models listed at this side of the packaging itself, although many of these have now been discontinued. So we have Kingpin Cooling NA Pro memory container. This is still available at kingpincooling.com, although I think Vince already has newer memory pot already in design. This is the Northbridge pot which I mentioned, which I also have. It's no longer available at Kingpin's website, maybe only upon special request. Here's the Venom container, although it's now discontinued, just like the F1 Dark. The F1 Dark and the Venom became one, or so they were mixed into the T-REX. So T-REX is the only CPU container available nowadays from kingpincooling.com. Here's the F1 Kingpin Cooling F1 Gemini. So it was the rocket base CPU container. It was available both with slow and fast base for the container. I think the faster one was only like 800 grams. So it's very, very light CPU container. It's not suitable at all with modern high core count CPUs, but it was alright with old full pot CPUs like Ivy Bridge 3770K or like AM3 CPU Z validations like Bulldozer and Viscera, which don't do that much, or which don't produce that much heat when you only try to make max validations with 2 cores enabled. Then here are the graphics card options, so Tech9 Fat and Tech9 Slim. Neither of these are available anymore at Kingpin's website. The Tech9 Fat is now available as Tech9 Icon, which I already showed you like 1 year ago. Tech9 Slim may be only upon special request because people don't run 3-way and 4-way SLI anymore, because only 2-way is now pretty much supported even in benchmarking use. So maybe you can get the Slim if you make a special request from Wins over at Kingpin Cooling, but otherwise for most it's not available anymore. So just Tech9 Icon plus T-REX for the CPU plus the memory. So that's pretty much it. Nothing else on the packaging itself, just products labeled on both sides. So I think we can just open this up and see what it comes with. As I said, this is a used unit. I got this for very good price from Gavin at Kingpin Cooling website or Europe store. So if you live in Europe, in any EU country or in the UK, and you are interested in Kingpin Cooling extreme cooling gear, go check out his website. So you can get Kingpin cooling gear without the hassle of importing them from outside EU. So just saying. So let's open this up. So here's how it looks like. So there are cutouts for the parts inside. So this is just the F1 Dark container with red hold down plate. So here's the red hold down plate. This is not the same as the original hold down plate for the F1 Dark. This is the upgraded version of the hold down plate, which has AM4 support. So you can see the extra holes over here. These are for the new AM4 socket. These are the standard ones over here. So AM3 is the topper one over here. I mean, yeah, AM3. The AM4 is the lower option over here. And then these are the new Intel like X299, 115X, 775, X58 and so on. Here's the backplate. It's easier to see the AM3 and AM4 from these, so I think the lower is AM4 and the higher is AM3. This is some very old Intel, I think, which is not even run by anyone nowadays. Same rods and mounting gear as other Kingpin Cooling pots, although nowadays you can use the larger thumb nuts with the T-REX, which are better for tightening the pot down than those smaller ones. And here's the actual container itself. So that's how the F1 Dark looks like. So it's single copper monster with just nickel plating. When looking at the internal design, it's very standard, nothing too special, just 8 holes in total, 4 bigger ones at the corners and 4 smaller ones at the center. But really solid design, and it definitely works. This pot is amazing for very strict temperature control. So for 775 and other CPUs. So, but the only issue is the overall compatibility with modern CPUs. So here is the 10980XE, I mean 10980XE Cascade Lake X, and when comparing it to the size of the container, it's very on the edge that can it cover the entire IHS. It can cover this one, but very barely. But it already shows that it cannot cover the entire IHS of the 28-core Xeon, let alone the new AMD Threadripper CPUs. But overall, it's very nice. Here's the hole for the thermocouple. The first kind of proper liquid nitrogen pot that was released to the whole like market of extreme PC cooling gear. Cooling gear was the original Kingpin Cooling Dragon F1 Extreme Edition. It was released at around like 2007 or 2008. It's pretty much the same container as this one over here. Same internal design, but it's a little bit smaller. So the bottom like contact size is smaller than on the F1 Dark. So the F1 Dark is an improved version of the original F1 Extreme Edition. This came out, I think this came out at the time of those Sandy Bridge E CPUs. So at very late of 2011 and very early 2012. Like the Sandy Bridge E 3930K, 3960X and 3970X. Those had larger integrated heat spreaders than any other previous Intel CPU. So that's why the increase on the contact surface was the main reason why the whole F1 Dark was developed. And it's one of the main reasons why T-REX came out, because of the newer, very large CPUs. And F1 Dark isn't very compatible anymore with those. So that's pretty much the history of this container and the history of many other containers as well. The original Dragon F1 Extreme Edition lacked the hole for the thermocouple as well. So you had to drill that yourself, or you could just tape the thermocouple against the copper surface over here, but it's not so accurate compared to a proper hole. But with the F1 Dark, it was already applied, so that's why it's very nice. But anyways, that is the short unboxing and overview of the Kingpin Cooling Dragon F1 Dark, plus many other pots that I happen to have. If you like to see this video, if you like to see this old container and the reasons behind me getting it, why I wanted to get such an old container and how I think containers compared to each other, then please give a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, drop them down below. But other than that, thanks again for watching this video. I hope you will subscribe, and other than that, I will see you on the next one.